Then just give me the nod.
Will do. Chairman, you may begin.
Morning, this is the planning board meeting of May 8th. Thank you to all of the volunteer members and alternates. Your service is much appreciated. Today's agenda is, we'll have a few moments on the privilege of the floor. We're reviewing the status of our consultant plans. We have a new consultant from North Country Council, and we also have the SE Group today here on video to talk about our plans for the future. As well, we have a discussion, open discussion about our master plan. And we have committee reports as usual, and a few words from the select board ex officio. So we'll begin by roll call.
Rich Smith, member. Helen Burko, alternate.
Mike Coppell, member. I have to leave at 9:30.
Rob Wilson, alternate.
Nancy Miller, alternate.
Bill Spence, member.
Catherine Brennan, member.
Morgan Dean, member.
John Racine, member.
Margaret Turner, alternate.
Rich Rita, select board ex officio.
We have 7 members voting. We won't seat any alternates today, but we're certainly happy to have the alternates here, and your contributions are always welcome. The first item on the agenda then will be privilege of the floor. Gentlemen, tell us who you are and where you live and what you would like to talk about.
Will Lambert, Valley Road Property Services. This is Jim Dunn from Summit View Townhomes. And we're here today because we wanted to talk about dumpster enclosures. I didn't know if a developer comes in or someone has a project in town, when they have a dumpster enclosure, is there a set of regulations from the planning board or guidelines that they're supposed to follow for putting in something like this?
Yes, there are it's actually a select board function. There's a select board ordinance on dumpsters. I believe there are two select board,
Yeah,
and there are regulations too with regard to the enclosures.
Okay, time out. Is that microphone picking up this conversation? Could you move the microphone?
Yeah, they're not in their heads.
Oh, yeah, it's all
We can
over.
hear you.
Okay, good enough. Go ahead.
So if you have any questions about the dumpster enclosures, I bring it to the select board directly, or perhaps better go to town staff and see if they can answer your questions.
Yeah.
Let me jump in.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so we got this letter, Will got it, gave it to me and also Mountain Sun Quarter Shares. We share a parking area with them off Mountain Sun Way. And basically there are 14 criteria that the town inspected to on the dumpster enclosure. And 3 of those, actually 5 of them, they failed our enclosure on. 2 of the 5 we don't need to talk about, but 3 I've got some concerns about. Specifically, what's the requirement to make it go from fail to pass? For example, gates, doors open and close properly. They failed us. I can operate the door myself and the gates one-handed. Where are we going with this? Okay, the second one is the gate locks secure and operable. It does. And third, the flooring is level, intact, and stable. So before we go, we contacted the Public Works about this and asked about the spec, and we really didn't get anything back. So we scheduled a meeting for next Tuesday. But I talked to Will yesterday and said, hey, when Bull Hill, and I'll use that as an example, came in and said, we want to build these condos and there has to be an enclosure around a dumpster, I would think they would say, here's what we're proposing, it meets the requirements. What are the requirements? That's what we have to know. And we just decided maybe come to this group and present that case. And we don't need an answer here today. Maybe we'll get this on Tuesday, but so far, we've met with the president of Mountain Sun, myself and Will several different times. and we'll see what happens on Tuesday. But maybe if somebody here knows what the spec is, I would appreciate it if we could get that.
If I can, Mr. Chair, again.
Yes, go ahead.
This is a select board issue, not a planning board issue. And there are regulations, you can get a copy of the regulations. And you already scheduled a meeting with town staff to go over your questions. That should be the first step. And if you're not satisfied with their answers or what they want you to do, for corrective action, you can always come to the select board to raise your issue with the select board and see what their decision would be. Mark, do you want to say anything on this?
Well, Rich, they are really not clear, and I agree with you.
Okay,
Everyone's confused, so it needs to be black and white for us.
all right.
It's an issue in town. Everyone's like, I don't get it. What do we? So something's gotta be clear with the select board on putting something out with the.
So you mean the letter was unclear, not.
Yeah, the letter is
not the
unclear.
ordinances or the.
The letter is
regulations.
unclear.
Okay,
And it's ordinances 20 and 21.
Right.
You're looking,
select board order 2021, and then there are regulations that implement. The ordinance is,
I mean, because this isn't the only two associations, I probably have about 6 that are real concerned, because obviously. There's a timeline, but yet everybody puts their budgets in place and their meetings are in the spring for the following. I realize the timetables for the following year, 2026, but it puts some constraints on them, and not every association has a ton of money to devote to something like this, depending on the outcome of what needs to be done. So we were just after the clarification side.
Good enough.
Thank you.
sure,
Thank you, gentlemen. No, we didn't know about this concern and now we do. And so
it's in the select board.
it's in their court. But, yeah,
meeting next Wednesday?
No, our next meeting is the 21st. Of May. Let's see what
Yeah.
see what your discussions with
Yeah.
with Megan, I take it,
Yeah.
Public Works, you have next Tuesday.
All right, perfect.
okay,
Super.
thank you for
your
bringing it
time.
forward and
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
thank you, gentlemen. We have, the minutes, of course, the minutes. Let us take a minute to review the minutes. Are there any comments or amendments to be made to the minutes?
Did you open the meeting?
I did.
Didn't it say that?
Would like me to open it again?
No,
No,
John
it said
Racine.
John Racine opened the meeting.
Bill Spence opened the public hearing.
Yeah.
Meeting was
I
called.
want you to
it's right
get
at the very
credit for
top,
what.
line 9.
Oh,
And,
yeah, sorry.
You know,
Oh, it
you-
is in the-
You're a hard-working man.
I am.
It's in the.
No
Okay.
offense to John.
I see that, sorry, so that's saved in there.
Good
There
catch.
you go,
John, you
Bill.
should be in this chair. You're happily retired, I know.
You're doing a great job, Bill.
All right, otherwise, Alicia, thank you for good minutes.
You're welcome, thank you. I'll change the format on that, that's like a saved thing.
You gotta change that template.
I will change the template.
Yeah. Okay, any comments? Any amendments? Do I hear a motion?
I move we accept the minutes as modified,
All right, or as presented? Okay, as amended.
whatever.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes approved. Our quest to find a consultant to help us through the plans that inevitably are going to be presented to the town have been successful, and we have a new consultant that I would like to introduce to you. Liz Emerson from North Country Council. Hello, Liz. Could you introduce yourself, please, and tell us something of your background?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm excited to start this. with you guys. So I'm Liz Emerson. I've been doing planning and zoning for a little over 13 years. I was just recently with the town of Charlestown. My personal life has brought me up to Dummer, New Hampshire. So I was looking for something a little closer to home. So the North Country Council, I interviewed with them and I've started with them. This is now my third week with them. So the process that will go through for me, the town will receive an application. They'll scan them in, send them to me in PDF format. I will confirm that I received the application. I'll review the application for completeness and compliance with local and state regulations, and ordinances. I'll give the feedback. I'll draft the notices. Send over, do have to send over the planning board checklist to Alicia. Just, it's kind of just do we have this done? What date does it need to be done by? Just to make it more efficient. I will attend the planning board meetings at least once every quarter. But if there's an application, obviously I will be attending more often than that. I will definitely keep you guys apprised on the legislative actions that are being taken up currently. I believe there's 7 of them total, which could potentially change the layout of zoning ordinances. For example, they may require detached accessory dwelling units, so that will change. That will definitely change some zoning ordinances around the state. I will help. Noise was brought up. I met with Bill yesterday with Steve and Alicia, and noise was definitely a possible concern to look at. So I could definitely help, with your guys' input, and help. We can draft some noise regulations. And then I believe that was most of what my job will entail. Constant communication with you guys, obviously, because that's key. The one question I had, so if I'm reviewing a plan and there's something missing, does the planning board chair or the town, or would I be reaching out to the applicant for more information?
I would say start with talking with the town, with Mark and with me.
Okay, perfect.
Then we will ask the applicant
Okay, perfect.
to improve the application.
Perfect. Awesome.
Could you give us highlights of your experience?
Absolutely. The biggest highlights are actually most recently with Green Source. So Green Source is a microchip operation. They just received $34 million in federal funding to fill, so they have to build a 96,000 square foot building. The 34 million is for all of the technology to fill the building. So all of the machinery, and all the technology, security, things like that. So that was the largest project that I've worked on so far. So phase 1 is it's almost 96,000 square feet. Then this phase 2 is a 74,000 square foot addition. And then phase 3 is an 80,000 square foot addition. Like I said, they're working with the Department of Defense. So that is the largest project that I've worked on. Going through site plan annexation, they had to do lot line adjustments, wetlands permit applications, alteration of terrain. They had to do pretty much everything that's required for a site plan. And through the state, they were required to do it. I've done some grant paperwork. I've received $84,000 for the town of Newport for their opera house. So that was my grant work. I'm doing some housing champion applications currently. But yeah, I've done code enforcement. I was the health officer for the town of Charlestown, along with the assessing clerk. So my background is a little bit of everything. I got pulled into a lot of different things.
Good. Thank you. So we
Yeah.
look forward to working with you.
Absolutely, me too.
I'll have a few challenges to throw your way, I'm sure.
Perfect. Perfect. Sounds good.
Also, we have representatives from the SE Group with us this morning. Could you introduce yourselves and we'll talk about the work that we've asked you to do.
Mark, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. Good morning, everybody. And I'm going to turn it over to Alex because Alex is going to be leading the charge for us. So good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody. I'm Mark Kane. I'm the managing director of the communities market sector at SE Group. And just by way of introduction, I know some of you, obviously we've had some interactions with the community before, but SE Group was founded in Sugar Hill in 1958. As really the first consulting firm that specialized in the mountain resort world. And as a result of those experiences in the 50s into the 60s into the 70s, we started to realize that in addition to the ski areas themselves, there were these communities that were at the base of them that had a lot of opportunities and issues. So we as a consultancy over the last 60 something years have expanded our footprint in professional work. I'm a planner by background, 30 something years at this point, 34 years, I think. And our team for this project is largely located in Burlington, Vermont. So that's where our main office is in the east is. We have an office as well in Salt Lake City, Utah, a bunch of folks in Colorado, some folks in Washington State, and a few folks in New Hampshire as well. So we have got a nice smattering of consultants across the country. I was the principal planner and author and project manager for the pedestrian village study that we worked with the community on a few years back. So I have a pretty good understanding and knowledge of Waterville Valley as a place. And I'm happy to see that there's been some continued reliance and use of that and informative of the master plan, which is great. I think the big thing I just and Alex will get into the more of the details of this. I think our national exposure to working in ski towns is, I think, at the heart of what we're here for, is to help you guys understand how best practices in communities that are influenced by ski resorts and other resort destinations sort of navigate the complexities of development and long range planning and zoning changes and all of those things. It wasn't lost on me the first time I visited Waterville Valley of going up that long road, getting to the end and going, wow, there's a little tiny town here of very few people, but man, what an influence the ski area has on it. It's a big footprint, right? So that's a very common story in our work is there's a lot of smaller communities that have to function as kind of bigger communities because of the challenges of working in a destination environment. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alex and he can give a little bit more detail about the team and what we're planning on doing.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, a little bit more about me. I've been with SE Group for about 3 years. I do a lot of work in community planning, similar to what Mark was saying, in communities that are heavily influenced by resorts, outdoor recreation, and other kind of tourism pressures. Before that, I worked in regional planning in New Hampshire, including some time at North Country Council, where Liz now is, and lived up in Whitefield and spent a lot of time in the North Country and the White Mountains. So it's familiar terrain for me. Got to work a little bit with Mark Dakota on a couple of things during that time. So it's exciting to be back and working in the area again. Rounding out our team is Noelle Janou. If you want to say a little bit about yourself, Noelle.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, my name is Noelle Janou. I grew up in Southern Vermont, but I'm based in Utah right now, but know the Northeast pretty well. Yeah, and I do a lot of land use planning and affordable housing work with SE Group in mostly gateway communities like yourself. So yeah, excited to work on this.
Cool. So I was just going to go over a little bit about our scope of work and what the project next steps are going to be. I assume folks have seen, or maybe haven't seen the contract and scope of work that we have. I'm happy to share it on my screen, but I'm not sure if that's been in your packet or not.
We have talked about the initial questions that were outlined in your proposal. That gave us an idea of the scope of work and what our intention is to become, much more acquainted with how you see ski resorts with respect to town development.
Yep.
As you know, there's considerable amount of town development scheduled. That is, we're anticipating that it will happen at some time in the future. And that the town has expanded significantly since the COVID crisis.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And those things are bearing on how the planning board sees the future.
Right. Yeah, so
So-
that's really our core question at hand for this, what we're calling a planning and zoning audit. And it's not the same as, you know, other types of audits per se. We're using that term to say we're coming in and evaluating what you have against best practices that we are aware of from our work in other mountain resorts communities. And we're going to walk through that with you and think about what some of those best practices are and what might apply best going forward for your community. And so through that lens, we'll take a look at your master plan, zoning ordinance, site plan regulations, and subdivision regulations. And that's kind of the core of the process. We'll
Yes.
meet with you 2 more times. So first will be a review of some of our initial findings. Second meeting will be based off of the feedback we get from you at the first meeting. We're going to dial things in and get things pretty close to a kind of a final report. And that second meeting will be to, you know, iron out final details and give you an actionable document that you can use going forward. So that's the core of the process. We're envisioning that this will take place over the next 3 to 4 months. So we think it'll either be the next 2 planning commission or planning board meetings that we'll meet with you at, or we may pause for a month if we need to work through additional findings, or if your planning board business is going to mean that we don't have as much time on an agenda. So there's some flexibility around that, but our goal is to get you some actionable results and a report, you know, by the summer, so that you can move forward with that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Alex, I'm gonna weave in the legislation that Liz was talking about earlier. I think if we don't, we're basically gonna have to maybe throw away some of the.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mark, go ahead.
The legislative session will be over at the end of June. Could I just suggest that we wait until the July meeting to have the first meeting? If that fits into your schedule, Alex.
Yeah.
That'll give us the opportunity to see what legislation passes. And also we may have a plan for the June meeting for you guys to look at. So I think if we start the SE group's work in July, that would be best. Yeah, July 10th. That's just a suggestion, and then we can answer. That's,
Yeah, assuming it works.
I don't want to do a whole, I don't want to do a whole bunch of work and then have the new legislation potentially change. Well, you may, I mean, let's see how the legislative session goes and how the plan goes, and
Yes.
we can adjust from there, but maybe a first meeting for that first input in July.
Okay, does
That works for us. I think we'll have to just, Mark will probably need to amend the end date for the contract on that, because I think we said we'd wrap things up by I think 4 months from when we signed last month. So we may need an extra month or so to accommodate that. Makes sense to me. I think there's probably some work still to just some background work we can kind of make progress on in the meantime. But without taking the full deep dive on everything. So I'll sort that out and get back to you with a more kind of concrete schedule around that. But I think there's still some work we can do to see where you're at compared to some other communities. And then, I mean, Liz can say otherwise. I don't think there's anything on the legislative agenda that would totally override what we're looking at in terms of best practices. But obviously we're gonna need to know what you are allowed to do, what you're being required to do from a state land use law perspective. So it makes sense to me that we wouldn't want to go too far down the road.
I think we could also, in trying to figure out comparable communities across the country, we can probably anticipate some of those but like ADU is a good example. Like there's a lot of communities across the country that are expanding the scope and scale of what an ADU is. So, yes, the specific legislative requirements in New Hampshire will drive the final development of regulations. But uh, Noel's in Moab right now, so there's a lot of experience with things like ADUs and short-term rentals there, and so there may be some value to just being able to do some of the get some of the research work that needs to be done now or in the early part, and then come back in July once we have a clearer picture where the legislation's at and can sort of see how those things line up. But I would suspect we would find we'll find some examples of how other communities are handling it that would be informative to Waterville Valley.
Yeah, the biggest one that I could think of off the top of my head is I believe it's House Bill 631 for multifamily being allowed in commercially zoned areas. So that would probably be the largest implication, if anything.
Yes,
We already allow it.
yes,
Yeah, we already
but
have
we
that.
were contemplating that we didn't want any more. That is, the board's view was that we didn't want to build more residential in the remaining land that is developable in the town. And this, of course, will change that point of view. And I don't, and it apparently, there isn't anything that we can do about it. We simply are gonna cope with it. And that,
Right.
the work that we have done up until today is we've come a long way in bringing the town's ordinances into compliance with everything that we know about state regulations. We're satisfied with where we stand now, but that's now, it's not the future. And that's why we're most interested in obtaining your point of view to gain from the SE Group's experience in dealing with ski resorts in particular, and in recreational resorts in general. How are we going to cope with these changes and grow into the future?
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, you may.
I would just like to inform our new planners that I think some of the legislative activities being contemplated and likely to pass is going to have an impact and will not be welcome here in Waterville Valley. That is detached ADUs, parking limit changes from 1.5 to 1, and minimum lot sizes. Those are the three that come to my mind that if the legislature follows through and passes these and the governor signs them, would
Not make us.
would supersede our ordinances and will be very unwelcome, I think, by many residents in this town. So just to give you a little background of those issues, I think would be a great concern.
Would not make us happy.
No,
You
it
have a
would-
comment, Mike?
Would not make us happy.
No.
Rest assured, there's a lot of that going on around the country these days. Of top-down decisions informing local planning and ordinances.
back to increased density. I mean, that's the bottom line to these things, and increasing density of development, residential development for housing purposes, a laudable goal. But the increased density is something that I think would not be welcome here in Waterville Valley.
I think on that point, and obviously we would get into this in the work, but I think one of the things that we've experienced, and Noel and Alex jump into, but and Liz, you obviously probably have some perspective on this as well, is a lot of communities are now facing the prospect of having to deal with sort of larger needs for more density because of mandates that are coming down. And if you start to think about density, not just as the number of units, but also the form that the units take, that's kind of the thing that needs to come along with it. You got to think about not just how you break a lot up as you would in normal subdivision, but how you actually organize the forms, the structures, the pieces of it. So it puts a little bit more challenge to the puzzle, because now you got to think about not just we have to increase the number of units, but we have to figure out what forms make sense. And there's definitely some communities that have been trying to wrestle with that and come up with some strategies around that. But I think that may show up for you guys.
Yes, definitely think so. And that a large portion of the residential housing in Waterville Valley is non-occupied. That is, there are many people here who have second and family homes and they are non-resident taxpayers. That's where the significant issue, I think, will bubble up. And that, it's our job. We built the ordinances around the desires of the taxpayer voters. And now this is going to change significantly if these laws pass. But, what do? We have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Well, I'll just throw out, and I don't know the specific structure of your arrangement with Liz and North Country Council, but I know it seems like there's an opportunity to just stay in touch, especially around the legislative tracking piece, Liz. And I think I don't think it'd be a good idea for us to totally go in our separate corners and be working on these kind of related, services. So if there's an opportunity to stay in touch through that, I just don't know if
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
it's working with how you're billing the town and things like that. I don't want to incur additional expense if we
Makes
don't need
sense
to,
to
but
us.
yeah.
We want you to, we're gathered together today like this in order to say, this is the board. Hello, how do you do? And these are our consultants, the people who are going to help us deal with the future. And that, yes, we do definitely expect you to work together.
Great.
And
Sounds
that we look upon North Country Council as our day-to-day advisor. And that SE Group has been hired specifically to do this audit. But we don't look upon you as our day-to-day consultant.
Yep.
Bill,
Sounds good.
I'm curious, Mark, do we know or estimate approximately what percentage of our residential units are resident occupied as opposed to what I
Yes,
call other
we do.
stakeholders?
We do,
What percentage is that, Mark?
350 out of the 1450 or so.
Like 25%?
Yeah.
That was my estimate, okay. And that's important for us to understand.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Okay, we're happy with how things have turned out. We're very happy to have the insight of the SE Council, our SE Group, and we look forward to working with Liz on a day-to-day basis. So thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
The future looks good.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, John.
Will any of these folks be coming in person?
Yes, oh yeah, we will expect that as Liz will be here in person, that there's no substitute for being in the
Thank you.
room.
Okay,
Yes,
And when-
100%.
thank you.
But when we have something important to discuss, Liz will be here.
Good.
That on a meeting like this with, an agenda that doesn't contain any specific applications.
Yeah.
No need for her to be here. Nevertheless,
Agreed,
as
sure.
soon as there is an application and as soon as there is something to talk about that's of a controversial nature,
Mhm.
then Liz will be here and will participate with us.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you can't replace in-person meetings.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not, I don't know if this is a Liz question or an SE group, and I'm sorry they left, but how, do they factor in tax base when they make their recommendations?
I imagine so.
I want to make sure they do.
Yeah,
I would hope so. I know when drafting regulations, for the town of Charlestown, that is something that we always think about, because we don't want to raise taxes in any way. When drafting regulations, we want to keep it as even as we possibly can. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but we definitely, I know in my experience, we definitely try to find the middle ground when drafting ordinances.
I'm sorry. Just to make sure I understand, when we talk about development, do you factor in how much they'll contribute to the tax base?
So that's kind of hard to project because unless you know exactly what they're building, you can give a rough estimate, but you can't give exact figures. So say if someone's building 100,000 square foot building, they're most likely going to project this amount of tax base. But again, it depends on types of materials. Are they going to have asphalt as their driveway? Are they going to have water and sewer? There's a lot of different factors that play into the assessed value of properties. So depending on what they're building would sway how much of a tax base they're going to
Would commercial be different than residential?
Yes, usually commercial is assessed at a different value. But again, that all depends. That would be an assessor question. Definitely for them. I don't know who you guys use for your assessors. Is it Avatar? Maybe?
Mark,
No, Whitney Group.
Whitney Group. Okay. So that would definitely be a question for them. There are state regulations on how to assess properties, but they can be tweaked a tiny bit from company to company. So depends on exactly what their breakdown is.
Mark,
I'll
Mark.
reach out to Mark and Alex and I'll make sure that their final report addresses that question. And what their experience is in other resort and ski communities. We'll make sure that that's addressed.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Any other comments on consultancy work? Okay, we move on to say a few words about the master plan. I know we worked for what, 2 years to build our master plan. It's a good document, but it's not the future. And that we have a checklist and what would you call it, Mark?
Action plan.
Action plan.
Chapter
Okay.
8.
Yes, the end of the master plan contains our action plan, a number of points that, well, we wished to think about. I can see Rob looking for his and mine back here, but the reason I put this on the agenda was that I wanted to say to the planning board that perhaps because we did all this work and it is a good document, that the work we should do is at least maybe once on our every meeting to put this item on the agenda and to have certain aspects of the work that we need to do in the future to keep it up to date, to make sure that it's relevant. The worst thing that can happen to a master plan is that we do all of this work and then it gathers dust on the shelf. It's of no value to anyone if that happens. So if we keep working on it, it will become a living document and be relevant. So I would like to add it to the agenda as a standing item on the agenda, that we talk about whatever it is that we're doing that is relevant to keeping this document up to date. And the things that we said that we should do, are we doing them? Are we making any progress? Mark?
I'm sorry.
Go
You
ahead.
had your hand up.
I was just gonna say, do you want to give us homework? Like, should we come back to the next meeting with something of interest or, like, so that we can talk about like
Yes.
what as a group we want to do?
I think the next step would be, let's look at the action plan and prioritize. What's the most important thing that we could do to, well, help the town and keep this document relevant? So yes, if you want some homework, then I think that look at that document that is, that it's also been my tendency to say, we did a good job, it's a good document, and then we put it aside and say that's done, we're finished with it. Well, I said the nature of the master plan is that we're not finished with it and we're never finished with it. So yes, if we could look at it again, and in particular, look at chapter 8 to see what are our priorities, what do we want to do next? What's most important? And bring those ideas to the next meeting. And then, we start working on them. All in favor? Okay.
All right, good idea, Bill.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was gonna say. And should we put, let's pick 3 that we're gonna work on this quarter or whatever the number is next quarter, so that, it's tangible,
Yes.
as a team, what we're doing.
Maybe at the next meeting, you could identify those and then we can start putting them on the agenda with the July meeting.
Yeah, then we could identify our priorities and then simply put them on the agenda as specific items.
Because if you remember, there are individuals or groups that are responsible for working on those items. So if you guys identify the ones you maybe pick 10 or 20 of them that you want to look at for the rest of the year, then we can let those individuals and organizations know that you're going to be talking about them. So they can be here and give you some feedback.
So like last year or the year before, we had these working groups. We had the dark sky group, we had, yes, there's Morgan. We had the dark sky group and we had the sedimentation and Corcoran Pond group and And what happened? That is. So we need to continue to apply, pressure to those, in other words, to do work so that progress is made. Yeah, progress in civic government is very slow, but it's important that we continue to do it so that at the end of the year, we can say we accomplished something. Right.
I think we just want to make sure we keep in mind whatever SE group sort of comes back with as we're reviewing these next month or whenever we start to come up with these priorities. If there's any of these particular action plan items that could potentially be influenced by their work, that we want to ask them about that and understand how our master plan might need to evolve.
Well, I think we need to tell them about it. And that we are asking them as part of the assignment, what are the things they're going to do to audit? What are you going to audit if you're going to look at the town? You're going to look at the master plan. That's the place to start. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this today. That this is supposed to be the governing document. And if it's going to do that job, we want them to review it, say, what do you guys, what does SE Group think about the relevance of the master plan? And then are there things about it that they would say, shouldn't be there, or that are not particularly relevant, or that it needs to guide how we act in the future. That's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be our guiding plan. Does it do the job? And what do we need to do to modify it, to make it better?
Yes, just to follow up, I agree with everything's been said, but I do think we should provide, I think this is where you were coming from, Rick, is that we should let SE Group know as soon as possible what we consider our priorities in the master plan to be, if they're gonna provide us with some kind of path forward, any changes they would recommend to the master plan. So if we're gonna meet in June, we should come out of that and discuss this. We should come out of that discussion with particular points that we want to concentrate on, and then communicate that to SE Group in time for the July meeting. Which,
yes, and I expect that the July meeting will be our first, say, the preliminary report from the SE Group.
I would also recommend that we consider that discussion as a separate meeting. June could be a very heavy meeting.
And, the agenda could fill quickly.
And this is something that takes more discussion and not having to deal with the more mundane issues or any applications that may come our way. And
Yeah.
then maybe we want to shorten the period and not wait till June, when's our next meeting? June 10th,
12,
12th?
which is also the town versus school kickball game.
Oh,
Just
well,
throw
then
that
that
out
case,
there.
we definitely. So what I'm saying is we probably should take this homework assignment and schedule a meeting to discuss it, and only this. As soon as people feel comfortable doing that, so that we can come up with what we want to recommend, what we think our priorities are, and then get that to SE group as soon as possible. Not wait till June and the prep of
Okay, what I'm
business.
hearing is a proposal for a special meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Any,
Important or not.
yeah, any objections?
No.
All right. Calendars?
Are we hoping for before or after June 12th?
before, well,
Uh,
I was to say as soon as we can all agree on a date.
yeah. I'd say that's probably,
And
that
give
it
time
needs,
to review, so.
it needs to happen sometime in May.
Well, we do need time to look at it too. It is the 8th of May, so.
Right, so it's
at
the
least a
beginning of the
week or
month.
two.
How about the 22nd of May,
Hey, I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
before I leave?
We go.
Don't, talk-
We'll talk after.
don't do that. Okay, the 22nd is,
22nd.
is a Thursday,
is a
and
Thursday.
any objections to the 22nd?
I can't, but that's just me.
Well, you're the ghost.
Yeah. Important. Okay.
No,
No.
we want you here.
Sorry, but
Doesn't have to be a Thursday.
Make it 21st.
I won't be here.
Yeah, I won't either.
Yeah, not the 21st.
27, 28, 29.
I mean, I know we said, what about,
27?
27 in the morning I can do.
I won't be here. I mean, I know we don't wanna.
it's hard to get 11 people all available. At the same
Yeah,
time, so I
that's-
think we're
it
just
seems to
gonna have
be-
to pick a date.
Is June 5th too late? And
I
then
don't
that gives us, it's a week
I'll be in the
before.
Faroe Islands.
You'll be. Okay. What about the 19th? Is that not enough time? That's a Monday?
All right,
That-
back to the
No.
22nd.
Yeah, pick a date and then whoever can make it, can make it. And
Back to the 22nd,
Yeah,
do it.
all in favor?
Ooh,
Anybody objecting?
what time?
Yeah.
9.
You, 9?
I don't know, 10, yeah.
Alicia, do I hear 9?
Well, that way, yeah, that would be helpful for me.
Okay, 22nd, 9 AM. Talk about the master plan
Might be a little-
priority assessment.
Try and move things. 9 would work.
9 would work. Okay, Margaret.
Yeah, just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I just did a quick look through section 8. There are a lot of things in section 8 that are basically reflective of ongoing responsibilities of the planning board. And they're not specific tasks. So I think we should be looking for specific tasks. That we
Agreed.
want to take on.
That's what this is about. Yes, try to be specific.
So May 22nd at 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay.
Decided.
Would
There
you
you
like
go.
me to attend that meeting via Zoom, not at all, or in person?
Well, it's going to affect your work. And if you would like to be with us, we
Yes.
would be most happy to have you.
Come on down.
Yeah.
Alrighty. I
Yeah,
will, I will plan to be in person on the 22nd.
Oh.
Okay,
We're gonna have a couple hours.
we'll get something done. Yes. Okay, very good. Well, there's the Tyrell site plan design review. And I'm looking at Alicia and Mark, we have received nothing. Okay, good.
What did Tim say yesterday about an environmental review? You know,
Let's see, yesterday,
Oh,
yesterday where?
or
You mean
Tuesday, it is,
Tuesday?
it's Tuesday Zoom.
They are they're still in the process of applying for the environmental review for the Gone Pond. And, I mean, it's just a very long process with the Forest Service.
I thought they got a preliminary.
They are submitting, my understanding is they're submitting the final application for it. But they do not have anything in front of the Forest Service yet.
Thank you.
But they're actively working on it.
Yeah, you see the
Yeah.
engineers all
Yeah.
over.
I'm not sure if everyone, may I,
Yes, certainly.
since I already.
I don't know what he's talking about, so I was gonna ask that same question.
Well, I guess what I was gonna say is if you're curious, the Forest Service has a website that has all of the projects that they're currently working on listed with quite a bit of information regarding where they are in the process. So you can kind of see the steps that each project has to go through in order to get approved by the Forest Service. This particular project is not even on that project page yet, or it hasn't
That's
been
correct.
since the last time I saw it. So sort of more formal side of that, where it starts the review process by the Forest Service. And they go through sending their biologists out or whatever they have to do, depending on the project. So there are things here that are related to what's going on here in Waterville Valley. For example, they want to put more permanent lighting on the ski areas so that they can have night skiing and, during the ski season. So that's certainly maybe outside of our jurisdiction with regard to dark sky or whatever, but very least we'd want them to shut the lights off at 10 o'clock at night or whatever. If they could. So I occasionally make personal comments about the projects that are out there for public input, since some of these things aren't even at that phase yet. But it's just a good thing to keep an eye out, because there are projects that are going on around us that maybe influence how we feel about the way things are going on.
I think that's legitimate. May we then ask you to report at our regular meetings on what's going on at the Forest Service? We live in the White Mountain National Forest. It is most relevant that the things that occur in the forest. In fact, Mike.
Maybe we could do this a second way as well. We could perhaps ask Tim or one of Tim's representatives to come and tell us that which they are doing at the resort and what stage it's at. I'm sure that Tim would not be adverse. Everyone knows who Tim is.
Yeah.
I'm sure Tim would not be adverse to doing something like that. He's a pretty good guy.
Okay.
But I also think that idea about, having Rick come, because there's things that aren't the resort, that, kind of globally impact. So.
Yeah,
Well, we're gonna-
definitely it affects us. Though it's, you're quite right, outside of our jurisdiction, but nonetheless, it's a very interesting topic to.
It's good to know.
To understand what changes are occurring at the forest.
Yeah.
Just to thought one more thing.
Mike.
I'm assuming everybody knows that Tim / the resort has every other week, I think. A town, whatever, that anyone can zoom into, and it's pretty free form. And you could ask, and it's usually run by Tim. You can ask him anything that you want to know about what is going on. And Mark, you are usually on and are pretty open to any questions that people have about the town. It's a pretty good thing. And
I think it's every other Tuesday.
I think it's every other Tuesday and
At 10 a.m.
at 10 a.m. And Tim sends out a invitation to anyone that wishes to be on it. It's a good thing. And just a few, I'm assuming everybody knows about it.
Mr. Chair, I would ask that if we agree with Mike, that we simply just invite him to one of our meetings to give us an update. Let's see what date works for him. We don't have to have a particular meeting date. We can tell him what our meeting dates are.
Mhm.
Let him pick one. There's no particular hurry on this.
Good guy.
And in the meantime, Rick can peruse the documents that he's looking at, and he can, perhaps before Tim comes and talks to us, he can tell us where things stand.
Okay,
So I would just recommend an invitation to Tim to come talk to the select board sometime within the next few months. I mean, the planning.
the
board,
planning board, yeah.
within the next few months.
I understand. You're
Just for an
confirmed,
update, yeah, on the project.
Okay, we did it in June. We can. It would, we have a full agenda, I think, in June.
I think June and July will be busy with SE group and all of that, and
Yes.
whatever master plan. You might want to look at it, I think perhaps
August.
later, August or September. I don't foresee a hurry on
I agree with that.
on this invitation.
I think what'll happen is that we're maybe fortunate in that we've proceeded through the process of choosing a consultant. And that was a large project, and now we're comfortable with the results. And that the agenda has not been filled with applications. And now we're prepared to deal with applications. And my guess is some are going to happen.
Mhm.
And that I accept your recommendation to do this in August.
Late summer, early fall,
August,
whatever fits
yeah.
Tim's schedule
Okay,
in our meeting times.
Just,
And-
just to be clear, Liz, do you know who we're talking about when we say Tim?
I don't know who Tim is specifically, but
Tim, I mean, I don't know, I think he's the general, yeah, Tim Smith, general manager.
General manager
that's
of
what I assumed, yeah.
Waterville Valley Resort, Inc.
And resident of the town.
And he's a resident of the town and he's always around.
Perfect.
And they.
Good to know.
He's
Thank
come
you.
Yes, on several
On
occasions.
several occasions to brief us on their intentions or plans or what they actually are doing.
Yeah, that's all part of the indoctrination of Liz.
They have a 10-year plan, by the way, with the Forest Service, as you might know or suspect.
Okay.
Speaking of the forest, I read an article about, well, changes that may occur in the forest. In particular, I'm talking about logging rights.
Mhm.
Can you tell us anything about that, Rick?
Last time I looked, there's no specific, so I've been keeping an eye on it. Mostly for that, because I want to understand whether or not they're gonna sell some logging rights in the forest around us. It's a very real possibility that the president's said, oh, right, like, we need to make these forests work for us. We, our timber business is all in Canada at this point. We wanna start utilizing the forests that we have in this country to create, lumber and whatever, paper.
Yeah.
So, I'm watching for those kinds of things, because I wanna see if any trails that I like to hike are gonna get impacted by that stuff.
Yes,
We had a big timber project up by Russell Pond Campground, certainly not Waterville Valley, I think that's Woodstock over there. But they, they'll do it under the historically under the guise of forest restoration. But now it's gonna be commercial.
yeah, what I'm
activity as
concerned
well.
about is clear cutting.
And
That there be identified an area and then there's just gonna be a big hole in the White Mountain Forest.
Yeah.
And my hope would be that they wouldn't allow, so what happened at Russell Pond was not clear cutting. It was very specific to species, or whatever, but that was more of a biological reason for,
That's my understanding
do
too,
it?
yes.
commercially, maybe it doesn't make sense to do what they did up there, so they would take a lot more lumber. Frankly, I love that we have this forest here, but I'm not necessarily against the logging aspect of it, because it does a number of things. It creates other additional habitat for things that aren't here now, because we don't have forest fires, or whatever happens naturally typically around this area. And so if you've walked around in the woods, like if it got really dry and we had a fire, we'd be in tough shape, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, there's a great deal of fuel lying on the floor still.
A lot of the logging roads that are out here are starting to grow back in, so there isn't those sort of natural fire breaks and things that you would typically see out in here, so.
Mhm. No, I'm just interested in knowing if there's any particular information, any detail.
So I-
Other than an article or two that has appeared. Okay, Mike, you have a comment.
There is a specific thing that is going on, does not affect us. The administration, wherever you wish to point it, has suggested, and it is something moving very slowly through Congress, to sell several thousand acre, 100,000 acres of forest land in Utah and Nevada. To sell them not only as rights, but sell them outright to developers. That is, there is nothing going on right now in the Northeast. But we just have to know that there is a movement that says this land should be used more than is currently being used. And if you've been out to that area, you know, it's also, that's obviously not as gorgeous as ours, but.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Could we? No? Could we ask?
Does the state forest action plan, I believe it was updated last in 2020, if memory serves me correctly. I haven't ever like dug into it, but I wasn't sure if they may have had like a plan of attack for the state-owned forests around New Hampshire.
Mark?
Yeah, no, it doesn't apply here, Liz. It's
Okay.
the White Mountain National Forest 10-year plan.
Okay.
It is online.
Perfect. Okay.
It's coming up for review and renewal. I don't know if they're gonna have the staff to be able to do it.
Okay.
Does the 10-year plan say anything about logging?
Yes, it addresses all the uses in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
It is the White Mountain National Forest Master Plan.
Master plan. Okay. Any other comment?
I just, while we're talking about the Forest Service staff has been greatly reduced.
Yeah.
And we have people at the town level that we interface with. And there are fewer and fewer people to deal with. That's going to extend project timelines. And you know, if we have specific questions about the forest, it may take longer to get answers. Just because there aren't people around. As an example, we're trying to work on the Depot Camp Bridge and on Triple I Road out there. We've been extended 3 months because there's no engineering staff to review our request. So just be aware that if you have a question, it's going to take some time to get an answer.
Madam, could I ask you for the town core planning group report?
Sure, so we met April 22nd, and it wasn't too long of a meeting. Megan was there and she talked about that during the summertime, we'll be starting to replace the signs around town. Also, we talked about filling up the pond, which we've all seen that's already happened. Golden Eagle, I believe they had some quotes for the path coming from, you know, the backside of Golden Eagle into the pond, that they were going to start working on that in September. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the path itself the work will be done beginning on the week of May 19th, sometime during that week. And that is paving all the way from the archway from the Sally Port in the Golden Eagle down to the bridge.
We
And the paving of the sidewalks and the parking lot at Golden Eagle. They are working on scheduling with the contractor right now. Tentatively right after Labor Day, but it may get accelerated to June. They're trying to figure out if that works for the contractor's schedule. So it could be as early as June, but right now it's scheduled for post Labor Day. September.
Mike, did you have a question?
Oh, did we ever resolve?
Yeah, what's that the question?
Huh?
Well, I thought he did.
Something in the back of my mind said that the town was going to contribute, probably select board.
We are
Well,
going to
yeah.
contribute a total of $85,000, which was appropriated at town meeting. That includes the parking lot and the path.
All right, so that's the full extent of what we, the town, is going to pay for both the path going down
Yes,
and our share, or whatever you wanna call it, of the parking lot.
yes.
Okay, so that.
Pending the select board review of the project and the easement
Okay,
undergirding our responsibility.
okay, that, I just wanted to make sure that it
Okay.
didn't exceed that.
No, it can't by law.
Well,
There's no well about it. The town approved 85,000 so select board cannot spend more than $85,000
good.
on that project, full stop.
Was there any discussion concerning the handrail banister?
Yeah,
You know, that it
there,
it's falling apart and it ends at a specific point where it's just as slippery beyond as it is. Go ahead, Mark.
yeah, they were gonna put in fill on both sides and then it was gonna be.
I don't know what
Yeah.
Golden Eagle owns that railing. And that's why it stops where it does.
Hmm.
That's the boundary between the town property and the Golden Eagles property. There is no plan right now for on the town property to have that handrail, but Golden Eagle, my understanding is they're going to replace their section.
Maybe you should talk about it,
Well,
been-
was there, I'll ask.
extending the handrail because, well, my experience has been that many people want to know, why does this handrail stop here? Because it's just as slippery beyond it. In other words, during the winter, it's it's a hazard.
So would that be something we would take to the select board to do? Because you're
Yes.
saying you would extend it, yeah.
Yes, the town core working group is a committee of the select board, so we want to give a recommendation to the select board member on that group. She can bring it to the board and we can discuss it.
Okay. Just during privilege of the floor.
Oh, no, we could make it an agenda item, depending on your discussion, either way.
Okay, so let me get back to just to make sure that the town core work, discuss it with them and then.
Yeah, I discussed it with the chair first and see what she thinks about it.
Okay.
About it.
Then we talked about the Boulder Path Road project, making it like a full box project, meaning, and you guys, again, the terminology I'm not up on, but basically it's redoing the whole road because that's gonna give us a lifespan more of 10 to 20 or 20 to 25 years versus the original proposal of the $1.4 million that was proposed. So we appropriated 1.8 million at town meeting for this, so that's what we have to use, and we don't have final bids yet, but that's kind of what that's what we have to work at, so. We just discussed that a little bit. We also discussed about a need for bathrooms down on the north side. Nobody, the tennis center, no one had any plans to do that. Nor does the town, I believe. And then we talked about lighting, replacing, I think, Mark, is it 5 that they were gonna start with, replacing with the new around town? And yeah. So 5 of the solar lights, which is great because they can be coded individually for, when you want them to come on, dim, go off, which was kind of cool. And then there was some more discussion about signing. You know, when you're coming down from the ski resort and there's the sign that tells you, oh, you know, make the left and go to, talked about like, you know, that sign. Also signing coming into town on 49, where it says, you know, make a left to the Waterville Valley Ski Resort. And then behind it on the left side, we have our beautiful sign that says Waterville Valley, and it's got all the little icons down at the bottom. So there was a discussion about, is that confusing? Do people think if you turn left, are we saying that the town is up on the hill? Because we have a sign that says Waterville Valley Resort. And so there was a discussion about that. So people wanted to get feedback as far as what are they seeing in
That's
other
it.
communities, you know?
That discussion, I think, was had when they put the sign in a number of years back.
So,
The resort thing.
and that was-
And the select board didn't appreciate at the time that it could direct people could think that the town would make a left at Triple I. When we agreed to allow, I think it's on town right of way. No, is it state, it's state right of way? But the select board agreed with it. But we didn't take that into consideration. And when we asked them about perhaps changing it, the language on it, the resort said no.
So.
That was agreed on, by the way, for a different word.
He made a really good point because it says Waterville Valley Resort. I mean, that has a connotation of, you know, the
Right.
resort. It's a big welcoming and from a marketing, that makes sense that I would, you know, versus if it were to say Waterville Valley Ski Area versus Waterville Valley Resort, like what sounds more appealing? I mean, in my
No, I
opinion,
think it's
resort
definitely
sounds more
confusing.
appealing, you know, so I could see why it was done. So basically we just left it at look around, you know, in your travels, if you see other towns that have signing and verbiage, you know, and we can kind of discuss it, but that was it. So I will ask about just, you know, yeah, the extending, and if you mention it to Wendy too,
Yep.
Yep. And then make an
Let us
official.
know. What the Town hall working group thinks about that.
For Liz's benefit, Wendy is a member of the select board.
And also the chair of the town core working group.
Yes. I did do a little bit of homework to get to know some people.
All in good time, Liz.
Absolutely. Learning curve for everything.
John, may I ask you for the conservation report?
You may, Mr. Chair. So we had our meeting on April 24. There was quite a few things discussed. They talked about the 13 acres, possibly talking about a greenbelt zoning classification. Everybody wants a piece of the green belt. Everybody wants a piece of 13 acres, but we would like greenbelt zoning. They talked about ideas for snow management with salt usage, maybe sending flyers with that information on an insert through towns. And that's more geared to associations and homeowners, how much salt they use on their own driveways. We talked about that. We have some new people that joined us, 3 actually. Cliff
Lubitz.
Okay. Steph Lebec and Kelly Cannon all came on board and was approved.
No,
Not yet.
no,
They're
no,
gonna be,
because the new chair of the board, Paul, said you have one more person than you have a seat for.
okay,
So you need to decide who you want to fill
It's
that
gonna
one.
be an agenda item for the next.
Conservation,
Okay.
conservation.
got it. Thank you. Let me see what else here. They talked about some native plants, workshops. And pretty much that was it. Oh, Rick Vanderpool is still on board to come this year to do the mediation for the pond sediment. And we talked about the towns improving their webpage. And that was pretty much it.
When is Rick going to, do we know when Rick's going to do his
We don't
work?
have a date remember, all of his work is in the White Mountain National. Forest. So, and what I just said about their staffing. So I don't know what days or time period he's gonna be in there.
We did have a plan for earlier this year, but that's what Mark is talking about is slowing the project.
Oh, okay. And for Liz's benefit, Rick Vanderpool is a conservation expert. He proposed a plan that was approved to mediate the amount of silt that comes down off of Snows Mountain and flows into Corcoran Pond. It's a matter of diverting water flow upstream to allow sediment to occur up there rather than in the pond. And it's been a project, I don't know, at least 2 years, maybe more. And for your benefit, the 13 acres is in reference to a recent acquisition of land along the Mad River. 13 acres along the Mad River was acquired from a resident. It is now town property.
Perfect.
It's part of, some of it at least is in the flood zone. And in its sordid history, there was a town dump there at one time.
Is it a brownfield? Does anybody know, or a potential brownfield site? No. Okay.
Pre-1981 landfill.
And has everything been removed from it, or is it still, no? Okay. So
Working.
probably unlined landfill?
Buried
Yes.
and.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're
Capped.
hoping to receive approval to, what is the terminology, Mark? It's
A
S,
pre-1981 cap.
Remediate.
a cap. In other words, 2 or 3 feet of fresh dirt on top of, and let it be. And the 13 acres is zoned rec.
Okay.
And
We'll get you the map and lot number of this so you can.
and the Conservation Commission has recommended that it be green. That correct? Is a terminology? for
Greenbelt zoning.
Greenbelt zone? Okay. And
From the select board's perspective, we're not gonna take any action on that land until we have discussed the issue with DES.
Yeah, we just discussed it as as a board, we'd like to see happen to it. Yeah, but we can't do anything until that happens.
Yeah, so DES won't let, they frown upon closed landfills to have any growth other than grass on them. And I know that they have hired, last year they had hired a dozen or so people to start actually enforcing it. That the towns and cities in New Hampshire are doing their 2 annual inspections, which is just walking around the closed landfills. And just, there's a form that you have to submit, and that's on top of any well testing, things like that.
any comment, Mark?
No, we're coordinating with DES.
Okay.
Perfect. Perfect.
We're good.
And the final thing is next Conservation Commission meeting is May 22nd,
time?
That'd be a busy day for you, John.
1 p.m.
Okay.
It's one meeting to
You
the,
might make it.
well, it's, what could you ask for more, go from one meeting to another?
I know it, I love
I
it.
love it, yes.
Yes.
Another item that I'd like to add to the regular committee reports is to ask our ex officio from the select board to tell us what's going on at the select board. Rich.
So what's going on that relates to the planning board, the issue I would bring up here is that at our last select board meeting, Craig Larson came to give us, well, we had three topics in mind. The Wally's building, dumpster enclosures, and what he's planning to do to continue work on the pickleball court area, the plan that was approved by this planning board. On that topic, we referred him to the planning board and code enforcement officer that the select board, would not comment on his plans. If you go to the video of that, you can see what he was talking about. Lighting, awning, something, the building, carport, this sort of thing. And the select board did not want to engage him in any of that. He has a approved plan, and we simply told them to build to the plan. If he had modifications, to check with the code enforcement officer to see if he needed to come into the planning board and request a minor site plan review or something like that. And he also wanted to, as he said he promised, which he did, have a briefing. He would, public hearing he called it, but he would like to, when he's done with his project, discuss it with townspeople. I told him that the venue for that would be the planning board if he wanted to come in and voluntarily discuss his project and solicit input once it was completed.
This is, you're speaking just of the pickleball?
That whole site plan review that the planning board did.
Right,
There's a
bathrooms.
building,
no.
That building,
the
there's-
dumpster enclosure, there's the pickleball court, the parking area, the carport,
The
the
snack bar,
bathrooms.
snack bar
Yeah, all
bathrooms.
that.
So, yeah, we didn't really engage him in any of that.
We had a list of, what's it called? Precedent
And subsequent, right,
Conditions.
conditions.
and statement of intent, but the statement of intent is not legally binding on him.
Right.
But the conditions that the planning board placed on the project are.
And Dave's monitoring that as the code enforcement officer.
I did watch part of it. The portion where he was in disagreement about retaining wall versus stone wall, is that planning board?
No,
Okay,
No,
so
that's another soft topic.
on
That's
the
fine.
18th of September. Last year, Craig came to the select board and stated that he wanted to build a stone wall. Where there were bushes, this would be along Snowsbrook Road across, the opening across from Green Peak.
Back of the 8th hole.
Back of the 8th hole, thank you. And at that meeting, the board determined that it did not have the authority to grant him any approval or anything on the matter, because it said pretty plainly in the zoning ordinances that structure, a wall is a structure. And the issue at hand was that he wanted to put this wall within, I think, 1.5 feet within the town right of way. And with regard to road right of way, and you have to have 25 feet setback from that. So he wanted to build in the setback, a structure.
Mhm.
So our view at the time was that it would require action by the ZBA. We thought a dimensional relief would resolve it, but that wasn't the case. Actually, he would need a variance from the ZBA. So rejected it, and Craig was not happy. On September 26th, yeah,
For Liz's benefit, this person called Craig, is Craig Larson.
I'm
He's the,
sorry, the owner of the Waterville
He-
Valley Golf Club.
Yeah, on the corner of like Snows Mountain and Boulder.
that's it.
Snowsbrook Valley, Boulder Path, that triangle, that intersection right there. So, at our next select board meeting on the 26th, we reconsidered our decision, because, it appeared that, he would not qualify for a variance. He could not meet the five point test for a variance. And the board was at the first meeting was supportive of a wall as from an aesthetic viewpoint. And what he talked about was he wanted that wall. Didn't talk about a retaining wall. He talked about a wall for aesthetic purposes to keep people from trespassing on his property, and to help, to the extent it could, keep keeping golf balls from rolling into the road or across into the Green Peak development. So the board discussed it at, I said it was 26th of September, and determined that the language in zoning must be in error. That it was either a drafting error. If you read the language, it says structure, I won't read the whole thing to you, but a structure of these things, including but not limited to buildings, walls, fences more than 3 feet high, tennis courts, et cetera, et cetera. There's a comma between walls and fences more than 3 feet high. The board determined that that comma is probably a drafting error because there's no real difference between a wall and a fence, or that the planning board's logic was faulty when that was written and approved town meeting, and therefore it considered a wall under 3 feet, just like a fence under 3 feet, not to be considered a structure. Therefore, there was no setback condition that he needed to be concerned with. So the select board noticed that, it made the decision that that wall was not considered a structure. And then a notice was printed, and I think it was on the website. I signed it, and it was a 30-day period for people to comment on it. I also informed the chair, planning board at the time of that decision. There were no comments on it. Move forward to sometime in November.
I have to leave, but I want to make one tangential comment
Mhm.
that abutters were not notified that notice existed.
Mhm.
Right, just, I'm not making positive,
No,
negative,
fine.
but
Okay.
that abutters were not
No,
notified.
there was no notice to
There was
abutters.
there was no notification to abutters or
Right.
others. But I have, Tina has an emergency thing I
Okay.
have to go to.
That's correct. I forgot to mention that point as well. So in November, it came to the board's attention at one of its meetings that well, the whole purpose is needed to have it done, the decision made in September, because he was getting the stones then. It was an opportunity to get the stones for the stone wall. And so that's why he was coming to us at that time. In November, it came to the attention of the select board that a gate had been installed. The stones were not there yet. In fact, they were not placed until this spring, not that long ago, a couple weeks ago, maybe, or so. The gate, the posts of the gate were over 3 feet, 4.5 feet. So the board sent a letter to Mr. Larson saying he either had to remove the gate or lower it to 3 feet. And his response was he would take care of the issue. I think he said he would lower the gate, as I recall.
If you took a chainsaw to the post.
Well,
They're lowered.
Yeah.
well, that's, I think, maybe a recent development. Yesterday, yeah. So that's where things stood. We saw that the stones came in. I was a bit surprised because I thought when he was, and I think the other board member we changed one board member during this time. It was Bob, Wendy, and me that made the decision, and now, of course, it's Dan, Wendy, and I who are the select board members. But it was a surprise to Wendy and me when we were thinking wall originally decision. We were thinking either a mortared wall or a what's it called, a dry laid wall?
Dry fit stone wall.
Yeah, dry fit stone wall, which is something you see, and he talked about a New England type of stone wall. It turned out it was a bunch of boulders that were placed in a line.
Yeah.
And so that's what we saw. And then this pile of dirt arrived. And then we noticed that Craig is having work done in the town right of way, which is drainage for Snows Mountain Road. And when he came into the meeting to discuss his project, he raised this. And we told him that he had to, that he could not work in the town right of way. He had to get the dirt out of the town right of way. We agreed to discuss it further. In the meantime, he told him to stop. The grading work and the drainage work he was doing on the town right of way. And we sent him a cease and desist letter. Yesterday, the town came to an agreement with Craig of how to proceed further with his project. And that's where things stand at the moment. One issue, I think, that results from, that's more general, not particular to this project, that results from the select board's decision, is that a wall is not considered a structure if it's 3 feet or less throughout town.
Based on that comma.
Based on the board's decision that the comma was a drafting error,
Okay.
or that the logic was not there, and that it used its enforcement power to interpret the zoning that way.
Is the nature of the agreement part of this discussion?
Well, I mean, the agreement is simply that he agreed to remove, I think, most of the dirt,
He
and
will remove, the DPW will go over there. He is removing the dirt material down by the stone wall. It will be shaped and then loamed and seeded so that it's back to the grass.
so would not
But the
disturb the
DPW.
drainage. Right, what he had in mind all along, again, this is a lesson that the select board and the planning board should take at heart, is that when applicants come in front of, or people come in front of the boards and ask to do something, some type of land use issue comes up, or work on land, it pays to have specific language, documents, what exactly is meant and what was to be done. The select board thought he was talking about a stone wall, did not consider any grading or drainage would be part of this. In Craig's mind, his wall was a retaining wall. He added later, to my mind later, the idea that he was trying to control drainage onto his property. So he was building a retaining wall. which is
Retaining,
why-
as in retaining water.
Water from the road washing into his property. So if you looked at it from the green, you'd have like those stones, and then, but it would be filled in with dirt, and then you'd have, you know, like a retaining wall that way, and dirt behind it to support
So that road water would not wash onto the
his
golf
property.
course. I
Right,
get it.
his property. That's not what the select board understood when it decided to interpret the zoning as it did.
There is a drain right at that gate.
We were very concerned with that drain and the material washing in. He put the gate there to straddle the drain, so not to put a stone over the grate of the drain. And apparently, the road agent, Megan, was satisfied that the modifications he's going to make and the dirt he's going to remove will not impact the water flowing into that drain.
So for the planning board, we should revisit that when we're doing. I mean, it's different than the master plan, but
Well, there is an issue now open, to my mind, in zoning. Where if you read one thing, but it's another thing based on the select board's decision, i.e. what is a wall?
mm,
Right now, it doesn't say that there's a comma between wall and fences, so.
Yeah. No, that's not a laughing matter. It seems a bit so immaterial, a comma. But in this case, it was the point of the discussion
Right,
and the root of the argument.
right.
And we should revise our
I think
ordinance.
we need to make clear what, well, you have two paths. You can either object and go yell at the select board for doing this. And ask them to make clear on what basis they did this and what this means for zoning. Or you can simply accept it and change zoning. Seems to me those are the two choices this board has now.
Okay,
Arguing with the
And then-
select board is a whole
then
different
it's,
thing.
no, that, I don't think it'll produce a lot of results. Argument with the select board.
The,
Okay,
the planning board, has power,
I'm not arguing that.
right?
No, we all feel powerful, yes. No, what I'm saying is that for future reference, a clearer zoning ordinance, I think is more useful than trying to battle it out with the, select board.
Unless you wanted just yes, you could battle it out, but unless you wanted to register your displeasure with the select board's decision.
I don't know.
Or just go forward and change zoning. But of course, that's changing zoning.
Yes, and then the whole process to do it,
Correct.
including, town meeting.
Correct.
Liz, I know it's early, but do you have any thoughts on this or need to do more research first?
So right off the bat, in reading the structure definition, I would say walls, they're not considering stone walls. Because they're talking about buildings, right before that. But yeah, I definitely have to dig in and try to find when structure was defined, through the planning board to try to do some history research and seeing what they meant by it, if they've mentioned it or not. I think the select board, personally, I think they did the right thing by saying, no, this isn't exactly what you said, because in the beginning it sounded like he wanted to keep people off his property, but then it turned into a retaining wall. So either the plan changed over time. So yeah, I definitely have to sink my teeth into it a little bit more before I could definitely give a resolution for it.
Good, well, I recommend that you do that. Because
For sure.
this will not go away.
Yes, absolutely.
It should be fixed if it needs to be fixed.
I think
Okay.
that we're gonna have to repair that ordinance and maybe embellish it to some degree. To define a wall, a building wall, a
Yes.
retaining wall.
Yep.
An
border wall.
aesthetic
A border
wall,
Aesthetic.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we need to do
A
some work there,
landscaping wall. Yeah.
because, we don't wanna deal with this again.
Well, the
Yeah.
select board's position was that as is generally understood, we take the common meaning for the terms, we don't define everything. in our zone. That's because it'd be too onerous, right? So it defines a wall next to fences as a wall. And if you look at other places in the zoning, it talks about walls in terms of landscape, walls and fences in terms of landscaping. And that's how the board approached it, not as a wall of a building.
So we just note that, and we know we're gonna be making changes based on everything this year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because, Craig's not the only one who could.
Right.
Look, it's just a matter of, all right, my experience in being a board member is that those who want to do things will pick away at the zoning ordinances in their own interest.
I know.
And unless we fortify the zoning ordinances, it'll happen again.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We know we're gonna be making changes, so we know this as one when we make all those changes.
Yeah, well, we don't have a list as we have had in the past, like
Not yet.
last.
Well,
no, not
yeah.
yet.
My point is, we know we're gonna be making a lot.
Well, we had 5 last year and
I'm sure the state's gonna be.
yeah, the
providing a list
the
of it.
state's gonna impose. Which is our fundamental objection. And
Understood.
It's an outright imposition, but nonetheless, we're gonna have to deal with that. And while we're at it, we'll fences, walls and various definitions will be part of this exercise. Any other comment? Well, the calendar review is the next meeting is
May 22nd.
May 22nd, yeah. That's for sure. And then June, what is it? 12?
Regular meeting.
The regular meeting of the planning board will be June 12. Any other business? Do I hear motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Yes,
Second,
all in favor? The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Liz.
thank you.
Thank
Have a
you,
great
Liz.
day, guys.
Oh, it's gonna be fun, Liz.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
I haven't had so much trouble.
Mark,
with the
do they-
meeting. I haven't.
So what's-
Thank you.
All these